And now our host, Stephen Lee Morris.
Weston Gaylord is a playwright, librettist, and composer based in Los Angeles. He's a recipient of Humanitas Prize's Play LA Fellowship, and is also a member of the Geffen Playhouse Writers Group and Vagrancy Playwrights Group. Western works in multiple formats, combining live theater with virtual reality, which is what we're really here to talk about today. His plays one of his plays was a finalist with the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference. Weston Gaylord, welcome to Animal Farm.
Hi, Stephen. It's great to be here.
You are a young playwright, and at the same time, you have quite a bit of experience. You've been submitting your work, and you've also worked in various platforms. You've worked with an intersection of virtual reality, and you are a virtual reality creator as well as a playwright. The first question off the bat, here we sit coming into February of 2022. How optimistic are you about this form of storytelling, given the productions in the traditional format right now are a shadow of what I think Stage Raw tried to grab comprehensive listings for the first week of February, and we found there were actually 15 productions across the entire region to attend live. We're hoping that will pick up, but what with a combination of impediments, some of them are viral, some of them are financial. We'll see. How do you feel about a future in the business of the theater?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very challenging time. And I think it's been a really tough last couple of years to watch so many things get canceled and to watch the business of traditional theater shrink and become a shadow of what it's been. I'm still optimistic in the long term for two reasons. I think for one thing, being in the pandemic and the isolation that it has imposed on people has actually made them more hungry for live in-person entertainment and interactions that we kind of crave.
That's a nice theory. Your evidence for that would be?
Well, I think people are getting tired of staying in their houses. I think.
Is this a theory, or is this based on conversations you're having with friends?
Yeah. I mean, it's based on my own experience and conversations I've had with friends, and my sense of the being on Twitter and being online and kind of seeing the fever pitch that people have gotten to. And I think people feel cooped up, and also just that people miss as far as I can tell, people seem to be hungry to return to a world in which there's more in which they can be out in the world and experience the things they used to. And I think, we're seeing
you're using phrases like people want. I'm going to knuckle into that a little bit and say, which people are they? The people you know? What demographic are you talking about? What age group? Because you're getting that from a general feeling, but I'm taking it. The people on Twitter that you've been following on social media and having conversations with, who are they?
Yeah, I mean, well, let me say, obviously I can't speak for everybody. I know that people of my generation, which is to say, maybe people in their 20s and 30s, who are connected online to other people through social media and through, all kinds of digital engagement. I think my sense is that they're finding the limitations of what those can do. That initially in the pandemic, people who are either digital natives or very comfortable online and things like, Zoom and Twitter and ways of digital engagement, found it very easy to stay connected. But you have started to find the limitations of interpersonal interactions. In
your view, the people you're talking about, and it seems to be a specific subset and a specific generation, and thank you for making that clear, because that is potentially the future theater audience. Are these people who would ever actually go to the theater before the pandemic? Or were they always engaging? What kind of live experiences in terms of storytelling experiences were they? So is the cutbacks in theater a loss to them or not? Obviously, being cooped up in your house has a huge diminishing effect, but I'm just wondering how it affects this particular art form.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I almost wonder if people might, like, I grew up going to theater a lot and was, lucky to have been able to do so. But I also think, there are many people of the same kind of age and demographic who haven't, either out of interest or lack of opportunity or what have you. I wonder if, and I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder if out of the pandemic, there is a hunger for any kind of in-person experience that might actually drive people who didn't attend as much theater before to the theater, in the hope of having the kind of live experiences that they weren't able to have. So the
theater marketers better get busy.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. You've worked, I'm just interested in the intersection in your own work with virtual reality and with the theater. Let's start with virtual reality. What's your experience there? You are a creator of virtual reality experiences, and how did you get there? And tell us about that, and then we'll go to the playwriting part.
Yeah, I came to it not quite by accident, but certainly sort of sideways. What I studied in college was a field called human-computer interaction, which was kind of about how people think and process information, and how computers process information, and how to put those together in the best way. And I kind of was holding that in my head, and also being very interested in theater and performing and entertainment. And at the time that I graduated college, VR was sort of this burgeoning field, and I ended up working at a VR company called, at that time, VerseWorks, which was making simply what we called 360 video, which is essentially like panoramic cinematic video. So you can put on a VR headset and look around in any direction, up or down or to the side, and you see a scene playing in 360 degrees around you. So that's the simplest version of VR, which is it's a passive cinematic experience that just happens to wrap all the way around you.
This would seem to be a huge threat to the power of live theater, because it's literally taking you to an alternate universe, which is what theater is supposed to do, but you don't actually have to leave your house in order to experience this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as a threat to live theater. I think I think there's actually a sense that I found in which VR had a lot more in common with theater than it did with cinema.
Do say.
Well, working in LA, I found people who came into the VR industry often came to it from traditional film or TV media, where you have a rectangular frame, and thought of it as a puzzle or a challenge of, okay, if the viewer can look anywhere they want, how do I get them to look where I want them to? How can I frame something up, and how can I very cleverly guide the person to look here and now look here and so on? And I actually think a theatrical approach works much better, which is you're not forcing the viewer to look or put their attention in a particular place. You're presenting them with a whole world and saying, come look into this world, and you will find what is important. And so we found that more theatrical blocking and approach to direction worked better in VR. Yeah.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Of course, through lights and certain set design elements, that will draw certain focus on the stage. But you're right, it's not nearly the same intensity as what happens in film and TV. So that's very interesting. What about one of your own works, specifically Chained, a Victorian Nightmare? It was an interactive play that you wrote using some of virtual reality technology in the theater. How did that work?
Yeah, so you said it's one of the potential threats of VR to theater is it's something you do in your own home. I feel strongly that does not always have to be true, and that VR or any kind of interactive technological experience that takes you out of your home and takes you into a designed space can actually be more powerful than something you can do in your basement. So the idea with Chain was to try and combine what the best of storytelling in VR with what can be done in person. And so the way that piece worked was it was an adaptation of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. And it was for one audience member at a time. And essentially the audience member goes into a space, and over the course of the experience, rather than seeing the story of Scrooge, they step into a Scrooge-like role and are presented with the ghosts, their own kind of ghosts of past, present, and future. And the way that works is they started by walking into a small space, like a set-dressed Victorian kind of mud room or writing room, which was a real set dress space with dust and books on the walls and a little desk with a ledger and all these things. So you're actually in a real physical space, and a costumed actor comes in there with you, and you have a small interaction, a kind of immersive theater-like interaction with that actor. They sit you down, they get you to sign a book, they ask you some questions, and you get fully immersed in that space. And then as part of a kind of ritual, they put a VR headset on you, and you find yourself in the same room, but a kind of digital version, a inside VR version of that room. You can look around. And then what happened was you see in the wall in front of you, a hand reach out and take yours, and you get pulled forward. And once you've had the headset on, you see what was the wall in front of you, but the actual physical wall had moved away. And so you could be taken forward through where the wall used to be into this larger room. And that was a VR exploration space where you now could be in these different virtual worlds of a graveyard or a bedroom or flying over London or these different places from A Christmas Carol. And in the room with you is a live actor who is wearing a motion capture suit. And they are essentially puppeteering a digital character in the headset. So I'm wearing the headset on my head as an audience member, and what I'm seeing is a ghost, say the ghost of the past. And that is a character that appears as a ghost in the headset and is being controlled, the motion, by an actor who's standing right there.
Is it possible
I can speak with them
to use more than one audience member at a time?
Yes, there are experiences that do that. With this piece, because it is so personal, the ghosts are actually asking the audience questions about their own past, their own regrets from the past and their own fears about the future. We felt that it was such a personal experience that it had to be one at a time. But yes, the future of this, both artistically and realistically as a business model, you need more people to go through at once, which I think is actually great because it becomes then a social experience that you can share physical and virtual space with other people.
Crude question. what is the cost of doing a production such as this contrasted against the budget of doing A Christmas Carol?
Well, I think, it obviously depends on the production. The thing about VR is there is potentially a higher upfront cost to, creating the space in which this can happen, and the kind of hardware of the headset and tracking and the computer to run it and all of those things. But once that is in place, you could have you could have a location that is set up to run these types of experiences, that has all of the technology and set and everything there, and you could have multiple experiences happen in there. So there's more of an upfront cost. That particular experience cost more than a kind of indie production of A Christmas Carol, but maybe around the same as a high budget kind of, maybe around the same as the budget of a Broadway show.
I'm looking for the future of these kinds of experiments to the art form. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating what you're saying. It would be an absolutely thrilling experience to go through that. And I'm just wondering if can it pencil out, can it address the incredible challenges that theaters find themselves with this new legislation, not to mention the virus, but the new legislation is what's killing these tiny, tiny theaters. And it sounds like it might be able to help. It might be able to help. It kind of depends on the design elements.
Yeah, I think for one thing, VR is a way to increase accessibility to theater. There are ways, and the piece that I worked on involved an actor who's standing in the room with you, but there are also ways to have kind of co-presence with an actor who's in another space. There's a wonderful company out there called Tender Claws that created an experience called the Under Presents, which allowed a live real-time interaction between an audience member and an actor who is in their own home wearing a headset. And
where are they based?
I think
where are they based?
They're based in LA. Yeah. But I think I would hope that theaters might explore using this technology as a way of increasing their reach, or as a way of bringing more people into their spaces. I know that the Oregon Shakespeare Festival right now has a new artistic creative director, Nataki Garrett, who is really doing wonderful things there, and is very interested in figuring out how to use emerging technology to both push the boundaries of what theater can do and also figure out how to engage with a larger swath of audiences than they've traditionally had.
Weston Gaylord, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Next week, we're joined by Terry Morgan. Terry is the president of the LA Drama Critics Circle. He's also been a writer. He is a writer for Stage Raw and has been a theater reviewer for LA Weekly, Backstage West, LAist.com, and Variety.
If you enjoy Animal Farm, please support us on Patreon.